It's hard to imagine a decision made by a handful of politicians causing chaos, fear, and heartbreak on a scale that touches hundreds of millions of lives. And yet, that is exactly what happened in 1947 when the British Empire, after centuries of rule, decided to leave India. How could one administrative plan lead to millions of people being uprooted, families torn apart, and a subcontinent engulfed in one of the largest human migrations in history? Why did violence explode almost immediately, despite promises of order? And how did the creation of two nations, India and Pakistan, reshape global politics, affect the Cold War, and leave scars that persist even today? In this video, we are going to answer all these questions and trace the complex events behind the Partition of India. So let's start. For centuries, India had been under British colonial control. The British had established an administrative, economic, and social system designed to extract wealth and maintain power. But they had also created divisions along religious, social, and regional lines. Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, and other communities coexisted. But colonial policies often emphasized their differences, weakening traditional bonds and sowing mistrust. By the early 20th century, movements for independence had emerged, demanding self-rule. Figures like Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru advocated for a unified India, while others, most notably Muhammad Ali Jinnah of the Muslim League, warned that Muslims might be marginalized in a Hindu-majority state. The tension between unity and division set the stage for an unprecedented crisis. The Second World War weakened Britain, economically and politically, making it increasingly difficult to maintain control over its vast empire. At the same time, the Indian independence movement gained momentum. British leaders, exhausted and facing domestic pressures at home, decided that withdrawal was inevitable. However, the question remained, what kind of country would India become, and how would the transition be managed? Initially, British officials hoped for a smooth transfer of power and a unified nation. But decades of growing religious tension, mistrust between political leaders, and fear of domination by one community made compromise impossible. The Muslim League, led by Jinnah, insisted that Muslims in India needed a separate state to protect their rights and identity. The British, seeking a solution that would allow them to exit quickly, eventually agreed to this plan. India would be divided into two independent dominions, Hindu-majority India and Muslim-majority Pakistan. But drawing a border was never simple. Maps were hastily drawn by officials. With limited understanding of local demographics, entire districts were split, communities divided, and millions of people suddenly found themselves on the wrong side of a line. The Boundary Commission had mere weeks to finalize the borders, and the announcement of the line triggered immediate chaos. The scale of human movement was staggering. Around 14 to 16 million people were forced to leave their homes, migrate across newly drawn borders, and settle in territories where they would be a minority. For many, migration was not just relocation, it was an escape from violence. Trains carrying refugees became targets for attacks. Villages and towns were engulfed in riots. Estimates suggest that between 200,000 to 2 million people were killed in the mass violence that accompanied partition. Families were torn apart, women abducted, and countless lives destroyed in what became one of history's largest human tragedies. What was intended as a political solution became an enormous humanitarian disaster almost overnight. The British withdrawal and the rapid creation of two new states left both governments unprepared to handle the magnitude of the crisis. Administrative systems collapsed, law enforcement was overwhelmed, and local leaders struggled to maintain order. Refugees traveled on foot, by cart, and by train, often carrying only what they could hold. Entire communities were uprooted, losing not only property, but social and cultural ties that had existed for generations. The psychological trauma of displacement, the loss of loved ones, and the destruction of livelihoods left scars that would last for decades. At the same time, partition reshaped the political landscape of South Asia. Pakistan emerged as a homeland for Muslims, and India established itself as a secular, democratic republic for a Hindu-majority population with protections for minorities. But the division also institutionalized religious separation and sowed seeds of long-term conflict. The immediate aftermath saw wars over Kashmir, decades of political tension, and periodic conflicts that continue to this day. On a global scale, the creation of Pakistan introduced a new player in the Cold War, aligning itself strategically with powers that were eager to expand influence in Asia. Meanwhile, India had to navigate its own foreign policy carefully, balancing relations with neighbors, former colonial powers, and the emerging global order. Beyond politics and borders, the partition transformed society. Communities that had lived together for centuries were now segregated. Languages, schools, trade networks, and social hierarchies had to be reorganized. Economies were disrupted, industries were split, and both countries faced enormous challenges in rebuilding infrastructure and social cohesion. Yet, despite the trauma, both nations embarked on the difficult path of nation building, seeking stability, governance, and a new identity. The human resilience shown during this period became a testament to the determination of ordinary people caught in extraordinary circumstances. The legacy of partition is still visible today. In India, memories of displacement, loss, and survival are passed down through generations. In Pakistan, the narrative of homeland and identity remains central to national consciousness. Relations between the two countries continued to be influenced by the events of 1947, with diplomacy, conflict, and dialogue shaped by the historical memory of partition. At the same time, the migration of millions created a global Indian and Pakistani diaspora, influencing international business, politics, and culture. The consequences of one political decision continued to reverberate far beyond South Asia, making it one of the most significant historical events of the 20th century. The partition of India demonstrates how decisions made in political chambers, often by a small group of leaders under pressure, can ripple across societies and generations. It highlights the fragility of human systems in the face of large-scale upheaval, and the way ideology, identity, and power struggles can lead to both liberation and devastation. It challenges us to consider how nations are built, how borders are drawn, and how the lives of millions can be changed by the stroke of a pen or a hastily drawn line on a map. As the dust settled after 1947, the enormity of the partition's consequences became clear. India and Pakistan, two nations born from a single decision, faced the monumental task of building functioning governments almost from scratch. In India, leaders like Jawaharlal Nehru and Sardar Patel worked tirelessly to unify a diverse population, balance regional interests, and protect minorities, all while recovering from the trauma of mass migration and violence. Pakistan, meanwhile, faced the challenge of creating a national identity for people scattered across the geographically separated regions West Pakistan and East Pakistan, which later became Bangladesh. Administrative structures, law enforcement, education systems, and infrastructure had to be rebuilt in a matter of months, often under intense political pressure and international scrutiny. Economically, the partition disrupted trade networks, industry, and agriculture. Factories, businesses, and fertile lands were divided, leaving many without livelihoods. Refugees arriving in unfamiliar cities or provinces needed housing, food, and employment, creating immense pressure on governments that were already fragile. Social services were overwhelmed, and humanitarian aid struggled to reach the millions in need. Yet, amid this chaos, ordinary people demonstrated remarkable resilience. Communities organized to provide shelter, aid, and protection. Merchants restarted businesses. Farmers replanted crops, and educators reopened schools. Despite the trauma, society slowly rebuilt itself, laying the foundations for the modern economies of both countries. The human cost of partition, however, remained staggering. Millions had lost their homes, possessions, and family members. Women bore the brunt of the violence, facing abduction, forced conversions, and assaults. Families were separated, some permanently, leaving deep emotional scars that passed through generations. These personal tragedies shaped collective memory, influencing art, literature, and cinema in both nations for decades to come. Partition became not just a political event, but a profound cultural and psychological milestone, a lens through which identity, nationalism, and community cohesion were understood. Politically, the partition set the stage for ongoing tension between India and Pakistan. The princely state of Jammu and Kashmir became the most contentious issue, sparking wars in 1947, 1965, and 1971, and influencing geopolitics in South Asia for decades. Both nations militarized their borders, invested heavily in defense, and developed policies shaped by historical memory of mistrust and rivalry internationally. The newly formed states navigated the Cold War, seeking alliances and foreign aid while asserting sovereignty. Pakistan initially leaned toward the West, securing military and economic assistance from the United States, while India followed a non-aligned path, balancing relationships with both the Soviet Union and Western powers. These strategic choices were directly influenced by the partition and the need to secure national survival. The diaspora created by partition also had a global impact. Millions of Indians and Pakistanis who migrated or whose families were displaced found new homes across the world, particularly in the United Kingdom, North America, and the Middle East. They carried with them cultural traditions, business acumen, and political consciousness, influencing the countries they settled in while maintaining deep connections to the subcontinent. Today, the global Indian and Pakistani communities are a testament to the long-reaching effects of partition, showing how one historical event reshaped not only a region, but also global networks of migration, culture, and economics. Despite the suffering, partition also enabled both nations to define their own destinies. India emerged as a secular democracy with a constitution designed to protect minority rights and ensure civil liberties, though challenges persisted. Pakistan, as a homeland for Muslims, developed policies to unify diverse populations under a shared religious and national identity. Both countries embarked on paths of modernization, industrialization, and social reform, often influenced by the lessons learned during the chaotic period of partition. Political leaders had to balance the need for nation-building with the realities of trauma, displacement, and lingering hostility between communities. Education, governance, and cultural institutions were rebuilt, fostering a sense of resilience and identity. New narratives emerged, emphasizing independence, sacrifice, and national pride, even as they acknowledged the immense human cost. Literature, music, and film from both nations explore the emotional and social consequences of partition, keeping the memory alive for generations who did not experience it firsthand. By analyzing these cultural artifacts, we can understand how partition shaped not only politics and borders, but also collective identity and memory. The lessons of partition extend beyond India and Pakistan. It serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of drawing borders without regard to social, cultural, and religious realities. It highlights the human consequences of political decisions and the fragility of peace in divided societies. Scholars and policymakers continue to study partition to understand how rapid decolonization, communal tensions, and geopolitical considerations can converge into catastrophic outcomes. It is a story of resilience, tragedy, and the profound influence of political choices on ordinary lives. Even today, India and Pakistan are still navigating the legacies of partition. Diplomatic relations are fraught, and conflicts such as those over Kashmir remain unresolved. Social and economic inequalities persist, partly due to the uneven development caused by mass migration and displacement. Yet, both nations have also achieved remarkable progress, demonstrating human resilience and the ability to rebuild even after profound upheaval. The partition of India remains a defining moment not only in South Asian history, but in global history, illustrating how a single decision, influenced by imperial retreat and political calculation, can change the lives of 1 billion people and shape international relations for decades. The partition of India is more than a historical event. It is a story of human endurance, political complexity, and the enduring consequences of decisions made under pressure. It teaches us that history is not merely a sequence of dates and treaties, but a tapestry of human experiences, ambitions, and tragedies, Understanding partition allows us to see the intricate connections between colonialism, nationalism, identity, and global politics, reminding us that the consequences of political decisions ripple across generations, countries, and continents. It is a story of power, loss, survival, and hope, a story that continues to shape South Asia and the world even today.